What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Shank, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Darren Prince. Darren is a prominent sports and celebrity agent and global advocate for addiction and recovery. His book, Aiming High, How a Prominent Sports and Celebrity Agent Hit Rock Bottom at the Top, is out now, so make sure you guys grab that. Now, Darren's journey of how he became one of the top agents in the world is really incredible, and he shares it in this episode about how he really just started in sports card trading, and he ended up meeting a guy, as we all know, as Magic Johnson, which led him to this career where he's able to represent some of the biggest names in the industry. I geek out a little bit when he talks about, being the agent for Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan, but he also shares some really touching moments about his life and how he went down a road of addiction because he felt like he wasn't enough. But more importantly, how he overcame that addiction and how he found support from people who were around him and his loved ones, and now how he is really taking his message to change the lives of so many people that are affected by addiction. Obviously, this one's close to home as Darren was an opioid addict, and as you guys know, my mom battled opioids for 20 years of her life and it ultimately took it. But Darren is somebody who is advocating for that to no longer happen, and I feel blessed to have this conversation. I really enjoyed it. Now, before we get to the episode, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Movement Live is right around the corner, September 25, 27. It is going to be an incredible day and a half for you guys to level up your life in all areas and your business. So head over to gnmlive.com, grab your tickets now, and join us in September. I can't wait to see you there. Now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Darren Prince. Darren, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to it.
Dude, I literally, right before I hit record, I'm like, this is gold. I got to hit record. So don't say anything else. Like, we were just saying so many good things about life. But before we dive into all that stuff, why don't we take a minute and have you introduce yourself to my audience? Who are you today? And then we can unpack how you got there.
Darren Prince today is a type A, I'd say, still dominant personality that's extremely humble, spiritual. He's a giver. Never a taker. He wakes up in the morning, thinks about what he can give to the world, not what he can take. And I can help others. And I have an outright psychotic obsession with helping people struggling with drug addiction and substance abuse.
I love it, man. So obviously that's who you are at the core. Who you are when people Google you is somebody who manages some of the biggest athletes and stars in the world. I mean, you look at the list and you're talking Magic Johnson, Dennis Rodman. I'm a wrestling fan, so Ric Flair excites me, like those types of things, right? How does one even begin to get into that world to really, I mean, I'm really big on human connection. Like, how do we build relationships and all that stuff? But how do you get into it at the level that you're at and make that your career?
At 14, I started a baseball card business, and I wasn't the best student. I was always told I had a severe learning disability, but something with numbers and stats I always gravitated to. And God bless my late father. He saw that in me. And one day I was challenged by an intro to business teacher, as was the rest of the class, to go home and create this fictitious business. And I already was ahead of the curve. My friends were all into dating at that age, and baseball cards were kind of corny and old news. And I had 3 different odd jobs, from busboying. I'd work at a pizzeria. I worked at a supermarket squeezing orange juice. I took all that extra money. I put everybody's collections, $20 for this box and whatever. And before you knew it, I had a collection that was worth about $9,000. And I asked my dad to get me insurance, and he thought I was nuts. And then I showed him what they were all worth. I actually had a plan to execute it, and I pulled out a newspaper for a baseball card show happening in 2 weeks. Every single night I worked my butt off, just making sure I had perfect price tags on it and the nice holders, and my display was going to be amazing. And I split the table. It was like $10 each with Steve Simon, who ironically now, this is 34 years ago, runs my agency, Prince Marketing Group.
Wow.
And I made over $1,000 that day. And that was it. It was just full steam ahead. So I did that for about 5 or 6 years. I was brokering some extremely expensive baseball cards for stockbrokers, very wealthy individuals. I'd go to a show, I'd buy it and flip it, make a few grand, and became a very, very lucrative business. Eventually, athletes started coming to these conventions and signing autographs, and I was so intrigued by it. This is amazing. Pete Rose, Reggie Jackson, Wade Boggs, Don Mattingly, Joe Montana. And I think the sexiness and the coolness of always being a little bit uncomfortable in my own skin, but having the ability to rub elbows with these, famous, iconic current athletes and legends. There was something that got my juices flowing. I want to get into that. And I hooked up through an old friend with Harlan Werner, who was Muhammad Ali's agent. And my first autograph signing was with Muhammad Ali. Wow. And it was just this incredible day in 1994 up in Boston. And we started taking ads out in magazines, having no idea what I was doing. And the stuff was selling, great profit margin, collectors all over the world. And I did that for about 3 years. My second person I hooked up with was Magic Johnson because of Harlan Werner. He introduced me to Magic and his agent. And it was always about cultivating relationships. And from there, I got Chevy Chase and Pamela Anderson and eventually Dennis Rodman. And I don't want to give away my book, Aiming High, but I talk about it. I got into some legal trouble that derailed my career in the memorabilia industry. But when I look back at that moment, it seemed to be a horrendous day, but it actually turned out to create one of the biggest, blessings of my business. So at the time, when I was being investigated by the FBI, what was going on, I lost everything. I was about $1 million in debt. The first time in my life I had financial problems. And I was in a limousine with Magic Johnson in Atlantic City before a autograph convention I booked for him. And I just broke down in tears. And I said, I don't know how I'm going to recover from this. I can't believe I made this stupid mistake. And he put his arm on my shoulder in the back of the limo and said, you know what, Darren, God tests great men and women. He tested me with the HIV, and he's testing you right now. And you're going to come out stronger, wiser, better because of this. I'm sure of it. And smarter. And you're going to make lemonade out of lemons. So the next week, with the last $3 grand I had to my name, I took my dad fly fishing in Alaska. It was our favorite thing to do. It was the first time we went away somewhere. And I got in a conversation in this incredible stream fly fishing. He said, what's your next move? I said, I want to be an agent, but I really think I can do the bigger stuff now, but I'm not an attorney and I'm too old to go to law school. And he told me words I will never forget. He goes, an attorney. There's no entertainment lawyer in Hollywood that wouldn't love your resume and the people that you know, Darren. It's all about who you know in life, not what you know. I said, well, who do I speak to? He goes, Magic. He supported you this entire time. Tell him your vision. Tell him what you want to do. And that's when it happened. No pun intended. The magic happened in 1995. We were in Detroit. I went to his hotel room to get him downstairs for another appearance that we had signing autographs. And he sat me down, and it was almost like one of those God moments. Like he almost knew that he needed to talk to his boy and said, what's up? And I said, look, man, I got this vision. I got this idea. I want to start my own agency called Prince Marketing Group. He goes, well, who are you going to look to sign? And I'm nervous as hell, shaking.
I can't even imagine. Like I'm picturing what that would be like.
Crazy.
Jeez.
I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm like, well, I'm hoping I could sign you as my first client. Because like this, and it's like, you know what? You have a good heart, and you're an honest dude, and you made a mistake. And I know all about making mistakes, and I love your family. Because I'm going to give you 2 years to be my agent. But if you don't use me to knock down every door to bring in all the celebrities you can, I'm going to fire you because before those 2 years are up, because it's not how successful I become, Darren. I know I'm going to be a success in business. It's how successful I can make you and everybody else around me. And you need to return that favor to others because that's what success is about. It's a domino effect. And I couldn't believe it. I remember leaving the room in tears, heading downstairs in the elevator thinking, did he kind of just tell me to exploit him, like to build? and that's what happened. So I started going back into the rotation of all the people I did autograph signings with, from Chevy to Pamela Anderson to Smokin' Joe Frazier to Ali. And now I had the credibility from those smaller deals. And it was just a matter of getting him into this whole new world. And when you got a guy like Magic and those other names, it was it took off pretty quickly. I mean, within a year or two, we were a household name, running big ads in the big trade magazines because there was no internet back then, getting a ton of publicity. And all of a sudden, I was this super agent that barely did a handful of deals. And
Wow.
unfortunately, the drug addiction, which were opiates at that point, strictly, that I was getting from doctors, allowed me to deal with that feeling of less than, allowed me to deal with the anxiety and have this imposter syndrome where the world thought, wow, look at this guy. He's 27, 28 on top of the world. But deep down inside, I felt like a broken piece of crap. I didn't feel worthy of any of it.
Mm. Dude, there's so much there from the idea. And I was a baseball card collector growing up. I've been to the conventions. Not often do you walk through those conventions and say, okay, that guy one day can rep a guy like Magic Johnson or whoever, right? So you had a different mindset going into everything. Was there always a bigger vision in your life no matter what? I know you said, hey, look, I had these baseball cards. I knew I could sell them and make a couple bucks, but that's different than I can run this empire, of a sports agency. And we're going to get into the addiction here in a minute, but I want to talk more about that mindset that you took into growing this thing.
Yeah, I mean, that there was. From the time I was 14, I knew that, and I think a lot of it came from my dad. I got emotional talking about him because there's 4 or 5 times a day I think about him. I lost him about 3.5 years ago. And, he would just always tell me, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And the idea is 1%, carrying it through is the other 99%. Your reputation's the hardest thing to uphold and the easiest thing to lose. And, I just knew I had to prove something to not just 1 or 2 people, to everybody. You don't forget when you're in a classroom with 50 kids and I'm in the back row with 3 other kids and the teachers have to isolate me and said, I'll get you your test, everybody in the back of the row, but I got to get everybody else's first. At the time, you don't think it does something to it, but it does. And that just added this psychotic, relentless, I'm going to show everybody that I'm here for a reason, not just here for a reason. I'm going to take it to a level that nobody's ever seen before because, I wasn't a voice. I didn't have a platform. So once I knew how to network and schmooze and just be me, the real me, not asking these celebrities, even to this day, for favors, because it's just not my personality. But getting to know them personally, that dad taught me, on the holidays, called and text messages on Thanksgiving. And the first 2 text messages religiously, you said you're a wrestling fan that I get before they get to me, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, every Thanksgiving, and, that's all part of that balance and what I needed to create to just take it to this level. And, knock on wood, man, we're still doing it. I mean, it's incredible. It feels like sometimes the agency's just starting. Even through this pandemic, we reinvented ourselves and started a whole new division, and it's really been amazing.
Yeah, dude, I love that stuff. Now, you mentioned the imposter syndrome, right? So, you get into this position where you're feeling the outside success, the money, the connections, I'm sure the parties, and all the other things that come with being around these types of individuals. What was that doing to your psyche? Why couldn't you break through, and why do you feel like you went towards the drugs?
I don't think I ever felt worthy of it. Even though I'm sitting on private jets, I'm with Magic. I'm at Muhammad Ali's house in Berrien Springs. I'm sitting in the gym at Smoke and Joe Frazier, sitting front row at the biggest championship fights on earth, from the Tyson Holyfields and the De La Hoya fights and whatever it was. And Joe's walking in and he's the king. It was always him and Ali, and, taking Pamela Anderson to fights with Chuck Zito, my boy, and all these experiences, and being on the set of VIP with her, sitting in the trailer, just talking and kicking it. And here I got the most gorgeous, desired woman on the planet. And she's calling me up 3-4 times a day. We're talking. I've got, Dennis Rodman in his heyday bringing me to all the strip clubs that are most guys' bucket list when you went with him back then. And just, again, I never felt worthy of it. So for me, I had to do all the exterior stuff to fill that void. It was the money. It was the cars. It was the jewelry. It was the life. It was the woman. It's one part I left out of my book because, not in a disrespectful way, but, that was an issue. That was an issue that I struggled with for a long, long time. When Darren Prince walked into the room, it had to be the hottest, most gorgeous, head-turning woman that any man has ever seen. not because of her, but because I needed it, because I was so broken and so insecure. And I needed everybody from high school, and I needed everybody in the real world to say, holy crap, how the hell did Darren Prince wind up with that woman?
Yeah.
And, it's all, like I said, it was all exterior solutions for what was really an inside fix. And I finally hit a brick wall with it at 38 years old when I was suicidal and didn't want to live anymore.
Mm. So where were you at that moment when you were thinking these things? I mean, were you deep in the addiction? Were you, what did your life look like? Because I think sometimes people think addict and they don't think what you're painting, right? They don't necessarily think these successful individuals who are still functioning at a regular level every single day. Because I mentioned to you before we record, my mom battled opioids for 20 years. And she would have jobs and she would look like a normal human being walking down the street. She didn't look like a tweaker, whatever word you want to use. So where were you in that moment when you're in that rock bottom moment when you're like, I just want to end my life?
I was highly functioning. Business was at an all-time high. I think about maybe a year and a half before that moment, I had an overdose, my first major overdose in Las Vegas. I was there with Dennis Rodman. We just signed a big television show deal with Mark Cuban for HDNet, his big network back then. I think he just recently sold it. And me and Steve Simon put that deal together, and I was just out of my mind, got a horrible case of bronchitis. Doctor gave me opiates and an opiate-based cough syrup. I came back to the hotel and told my then wife to call in a couple vodka Red Bull cranberries for me. And I'm on the ground within 2 minutes, chest palpitating, sweating, shaking, trembling, in and out of consciousness, foaming at the mouth between the double opiate combination and the booze. I went into a different space, and I'm sitting on the ground looking up at the sky, praying and crying to God, don't take me. I'll never freaking do this again. And obviously in a panic, she called the paramedics, came out, oxygen mask in my face, needle in my arm, EKG machine everywhere. And it was a really sick, sad sight, because again, you would have thought I had everything going on. And then Evel Knievel passed away, who was so near and dear to me, one of the most regal icons the world has ever known in the past 50 years. And I didn't know how to deal with that. And that put me over the deep end. So July 1st of 2008 is the beginning of when this journey started, because I didn't want to live anymore. I was so sick and tired of the double life. I didn't know how to escape it. I had no idea that chasing that feeling for 24 years of my life since I was 14, when I experimented with Demerol that a nurse gave me in sleepaway camp, that it was going to get to this point. What was once living to use turned out to using to live. That's the easiest way to put it. And my uncle and his then girlfriend were visiting my mom. They were in town from Miami, and they were both in the 12-step fellowship for recovered addicts and alcoholics. And he had no idea how bad life was for me, because I hit it well. Even at the end, there was probably 3 people in my life, outside my wife and maybe my parents, and Magic knew, because I had a Coleman and Hulk Hogan. I'd say maybe 5, maybe somebody in my office, Steve. And, I hit it really, really well. And this was the day, because my uncle's girlfriend, Andrea, came into my condo at the time with him. I never met her before. She looked at me, nice to meet you. How are you? And I don't know what it was. The words came out of my mouth. I said, I'm not good. And she's like, what's wrong? And I told her. She's like, wow. Do you realize you're an addict and your life's unmanageable? I said, yeah. And she's like, do you realize you're powerless? And I said, 100%. She goes, let me tell you the most important question. Ask you the most important question. Do you realize that addiction doesn't care if you're from Yale or Jill or Park Avenue and Park Bench? So all this stuff, the super agent bullshit that you hear, doesn't mean a goddamn thing if you don't mean anything. And that one got me to tears, because it hit home. And I said, I'm desperate. I'll do whatever it takes. And she said, I can get you detox in 24 hours, but you got to do everything I'm going to tell you to do. And I can get you onto the path of recovery to get this beautiful life that you deserve. And about 24 hours later, it was July 2nd, 2008. And I'm in New York City with my then wife. And I came back from the gym. I'm sweating. I'm shaking. I got the chills. I got hot flashes. I feel like I'm burning, vomiting. And at this time, I was detoxing from not only Suboxone, which is an opiate blocker, I was on a mood stabilizer, anxiety medication. I don't recommend it. I should have gone to rehab. And I called them up at 8:00, but 7:00 that night. I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm calling the doctor to get the prescriptions I really need to get. My brain is so opiate deficient, I can't do it. And they said, it's enough for the bull crap, Darren. You need to go online. You need to find a 12-step meeting. Put your hand up and surrender and tell these people that you're sick and you're suffering and you need help. And I said, I'm not doing it. There's no way. I've been to those stupid meetings. I can't identify with anybody. And I hung up the phone. I ran into the bathroom. I went to take a non-narcotic anxiety pill to help with the cravings, and out came 2 Vicodins, which was amazing because I knew that I cleaned out every medicine cabinet of all the opiates. Those were one of the 3 opiates I was addicted to. Percocets and Oxycontins were the other 2. And I had such a sign of relief. It was in this hand. I remember exactly what I needed. But then something happened and I fell to my knees and I shut my eyes and I started shaking, trembling, and crying. And first and only time I ever did this in my life, I just called out to God for help, and I'm screaming in the bathroom, I can't do this. I need you. And my wife is in the living room crying because I won't even let her into the door. And all of a sudden I heard a voice that, I've got you. And you're ready. And I felt this burning hot sensation on my right shoulder. And I stood up and it wasn't me. My hand just went like this and dropped the pills in the toilet bowl. I remember walking out into the living room. I went right onto a computer, 12-step meetings. I found one in the upper 80s, and there was no Uber back then. I go right downstairs into a taxi cab. And on the ride over, I'm looking up at the sky saying to myself, oh my God. For the first time in my adult life, I wanted to stay sober more than I wanted to get high. And I walked into a church basement. There must have been about 150 to 200 addicts and alcoholics, and that were all in recovery. And they asked, does anybody know? Instinctively, intuitively, with no hesitation. It wasn't about Magic Johnson and Muhammad Ali. This was life and death. I remember like this, and I'm shaking. And I said, my name's Darren. I'm an addict. I need help. I said, I'm suicidal. I don't know what to do. I said, I've been struggling with this for 24 years. And it was just the most amazing experience of my life, because there must have been 10 to 12 spiritual brothers and sisters that walked right over to me, right after I said that. And they're hugging me, they're patting me on the back, they're giving me kisses on the cheek. And they said, we got you. We've been where you've been. We can help you. Stick with the winners, one day at a time. Tougher days go 1 minute at a time. You don't ever have to go back to that life. And I could truly say at 38 years old, it was the first time I was ever in a room from nursery school to then that I finally felt a part of something. I understood what these people were saying. I identified with so friggin' much. The thought process, the brokenness, the uncomfortability in your own skin, the lack of confidence, having all the external success, but being so empty on the inside. And I just became this psychotic meeting maker. Nothing else mattered, because I learned early on that if you put anything else before your sobriety, you'll lose it.
I love it, man. And so have you been sober since that day?
I've been sober since that day. And about 6 weeks, God willing, one day at a time. I'm coming up on 12 years, July 2nd.
Amazing, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is no easy feat. Knowing many individuals who have addiction issues. And my dad actually is on, I think, 8 years sober. He had a drinking issue, obviously. And he's doing great. But it's a battle. It is an everyday thing to wake up and take it one day at a time. And so beyond the 12-step program, is there anything else that's driving you to remain sober and make this your message? I mean, you've written this book that I want to get into. What is the secret sauce?
The meetings are great. We still have them now on Zoom, but a lot of it is speaking engagements. A lot of it is I need my own messages. Jay Shetty's my boy, Lewis Howes, Gary B, Joel Holstein I'm close with. So when I'm on Instagram, Tony Robbins, all these guys give me that way of living, that perspective that my 12-step fellowship gives me. Because, for me, it's not about, putting a substance in my system. It's a thinking problem. It's when the anxiety comes on, what do I do with it? It's when that thought process of wanting to react and lash out at somebody, which I'm still not perfect at, but I'm so much better than I've ever been. I always talk about saying what you mean what you say, and not saying it mean. Now maybe it happens once every 3-4 months. And then I pay the price when I act out. I pay the price when I open my big fat mouth, because I can't take a pill or a drink or something like most normal people that aren't addicts and alcoholics. And I have to deal with it. I have to feel the pain for 2-3 days, that emotional hangover. So, and a lot of times, whatever I'm obsessing on, whatever I want to act out on, I realize if I don't act out on it and I just get involved in my routine of helping other people don't realize that we're not responsible for our thoughts, but we are responsible for how long we'll want to think those thoughts. And we mostly have tools to get out of our own way. And the easiest thing to do is help somebody else that's struggling, not just with addiction in life. It could be a relationship, a sickness, a job problem, some personal issues. Watch what that does for you. As much as it helps them, anybody that tries that way of life, it will light you up. And when I wrote the book Aiming High with my publisher Anna David and my writer Chris McInnes, we just thought the story would resonate and help a lot of people from the inspirational side and motivational side. And she was the one that said to me, it was a meeting by chance that we had, that your story is unbelievable. Why don't you take people through this journey of the hell of addiction to the beauty of spiritual recovery and make them a fly on the wall for this incredible life you've had around some of the most regal icons? And that's when it hit. And I said to myself, that's it. This is what my dad always wanted me to write a book about business. And it was 8 months after he passed, and I go, this is exactly the platform that I want. Because I don't want to write about the business. First off, so many of the stories are near and dear to me, and stuff that I wouldn't really share because my clients know me. They could trust me with their life. But when I now knew that I could leverage these stories, these experiences, and then bring my own hell into it to help change and save lives. And within 2 weeks, the book was an international bestseller in 4 countries. We couldn't believe it. And it's 18, 19 months old, and they're still selling. We ship so many out for free on my Instagram. If anyone's listening, go to @agent_DP. We ship free hardcovers to anybody that asks without even thinking about it, because I know when I get to that one person, I know when that one person picks it up and reads it and says, I don't want to be the next Darren Prince. I want to change my ways right now. I've even got my own affiliation with Banyan Treatment Centers. I got my own toll-free number. If somebody reads that book and is struggling and doesn't have the financial means, I will get you scholarship for treatment that you need.
I love it, man, dude. You can feel the passion come through you when you start talking about this, right? Like there's literally an energy shift. There's a tone shift. It's truly, tying your passion to your own sobriety and saying, look, and I look at it like, I gave the eulogy at my mom's funeral, and people are like, how'd you do it? I go, that was me healing. Like when you have an opportunity, for not everybody, but for a lot of people, when you have the opportunity to talk about the things that are hurting you and getting to really kind of help you get through, that's the healing process for people like you and me. And that's what you're doing now when you speak on these stages and writing this book and getting it down on paper. I love seeing it, man. So what was that like 3.5 years ago when your father passed away, dealing with your addiction?
It wasn't even a thought, man. I mean, that's the incredible thing, that we can get through the roughest, toughest stuff in life feeling so comfortable when it really should be uncomfortable. I've lost Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, Burt Reynolds. I've lost clients. It was gut-wrenching because I can't not watch TV or go on the internet and breaking stories of people like that. And Smoking Joe especially, who, outside of my dad, was the toughest loss I ever dealt with in my life. But, I was there with Joe and Muhammad, as I talk about in my book, the intro, but I got those 2 regal kings in the same room and they made peace with one another, but I was high on opiates because I couldn't be a part of this private historic experience. But both families had me basically sit right up front for their funerals, and I was their sober, centered, proud, and present. And what a gift. And my dad, he was perfect health, 81 years old. On Friday, January 13th, I landed in LA, and I was supposed to go with Dennis Rodman and my boy Nicky Sita, Joe Manganiello's 40th birthday party. And I got the call from my uncle that dad was rushed to the hospital. It's just unusual because he never even had a head cold. And I immediately went back to the airport. I was flying on a red-eye flight back to Newark, and they said he might not make it through the night. He had an aortic aneurysm. So I called my sponsor, Steve, who's one of my lifelines. And he goes, look, you have a foundation, Darren, at, 10 years, not 9 years sober, that I haven't seen with people with 30 years sober. This is life. This is life. And remember this, if God forbid it's his time, your dad had a sober son for 8.5 years. So that was the one that did it for me. And he goes, so you need to do him right now. I go, Steve, I don't even have a thought of it. I was like, he goes, well, that's because of your foundation. Go home, be there for your mom, your sister, whatever else you got to do, because you're going to be the man now. And hopefully he comes out of it. He goes, but I got a really good feeling he's going to make it through the night. And he was in a coma for a couple of weeks. He came out of it about 30 days in. I'm on the phone with Hulk Hogan one night, and I'm outside the hospital crying. And he goes, brother, let me ask you something. He calls me brother, believe it or not. So he goes, did you ever get that chance to play? He goes, and I love your dad. Marty Prince is a special man. I got Rodman calling magic. I mean, he was family to every one of them, full of wisdom. Because did you ever get a moment with him alone to ask him if he wants to keep fighting? And I said, no, I really haven't. And he goes, go back tomorrow night. Not with your girl or your mom or your sister. Go by yourself, because I know what you mean to your father. And hold his hand and ask him, because I had that gift with my dad, and it's incredible if you can get it. And so I went back, and as calm as could be, I had it all together. I got down on my knees on the side of the bed, and he was in and out of consciousness, and I held his hand, was rubbing his head, and Dad and I weren't really affectionate. He's giving me this look. I go, forget it. You're getting it now, okay? I got a question for you. And I said, if God's going to tell you you're going to be 75%, it's probably worth fighting. But if it's going to tell you it's going to be anything less than that, and you're ready to go, let me know. Go see Grandma and Grandpa, Joe and Muhammad, and everybody. Send my love and let them know that, I'm doing great down here. I said, I got it all together. I've never been in a better place. And he looked left. It had to be the hardest thing he ever had to do. And he looked back with tears in his eye, and he mouthed the words, I'm ready to die. I said, okay. I said, I got this. And I looked at him. And that's kind of when Joel Osteen's a good friend of mine. And he talks about when you hit that point where it's almost like there's an eruption inside of you for the better. And the way he lost his father and found his calling from behind the camera to the center stage as one of the greatest speakers of our generation. And something just happened. And I looked at him, I said, Dad, I said, business aside, that's good and great. I know you're proud of my accomplishment. I said, but I'm going to change the world in the face of recovery. I said, because I want to make sure that other daughters and sons have the same experience I did, where my dad got his son back sober for 8.5 years. That was it. The last time I saw him.
Wow. When I hear your story, and there's been so many highs and so many lows, the reality is you come out on top in some way, shape, or form. Yeah, the road may be rocky, it may be long, but you always come out on top. What are some key things some of the people listening could take and start to instill into their life to make sure that even from those rock bottom moments, they're able to kind of create success or happiness or whatever the case may be in their life?
I love what Gary Vee says. He's a friend of mine. It's so true. I'm a little bit older than him. You got to love losing, man. You got to love losing, because that's where the pain is. That's where the growth is. That's where the learning is. You got to love when you have those challenging times and embrace them and take that deep breath and just know that you're going to come out of it. Don't do what I did by numbing yourself with substances. Surround yourself with positive people, smarter people, gravitate from their success and learn from their failures. So you save yourself years of, mistakes and financial hardship. And I love when things are kind of all over the place now, because now I have the tools to reel it back in. And if something goes wrong or a deal doesn't go right or something we're expecting doesn't happen, my mindset's like, it's all good. Look at the next one, Yeah. And I've learned nothing about myself when I'm on top of life. Nothing. Everything I've learned is when I'm in the barrel and things are sideways and they're off, whether it's in a professional business relationship with my family and a personal relationship with a girlfriend or whatever it might be. That's when you really know what you're about. That's when the fight has to come alive within you to rise above it. And just know that there's no such thing as losing. It's all learning. And what are you going to do to step up your game? What are you now going to do while you're challenged? Because at the end of the day, adversity reveals our character. And that introduces us to our real self, not the success.
I love it, dude. I love it. So, the cool part about this podcast and very much your career, you have the opportunity and I have the opportunity to be surrounded with and speak with some really successful people, however you want to define success. And that's why I'm talking to you. So my question for you is, what is your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
The definition of success is, somebody that's accomplished everything they've ever wanted to accomplish, has grown from every painful experience, and most importantly, has brought other people along for the ride with them. Because when you attain success, it's about reaching back and giving back and giving other people that same blessings. And 3 things. I just think for me, there's a physical, emotional mindset that I have to take care of me first, because I know the success comes with that. I'm always pretty strict with my diet, working out, my 12-step meetings, working with other people in recovery. And I'm always making personal calls to my clients and making sure my team of agents and assistants are where they need to be. I always make it personal. So many people say business. No. You gotta get in somebody's mind and understand when it's time that they need a little picking up, a little pounds. Hey, how you doing? Because when somebody's just coming into that crazy psychotic business environment, they're still bringing stuff from the real world around them, and into your environment. And you don't want that. You want them to know that you're also a friend and not just employees, and those things, probably more than 3, that I need to do every single day to make sure I'm the best version of Darrin Prince.
I love it, man. They're all phenomenal tips and tricks that people can take into their life. So I usually wrap up every single interview with this one question, but before we get there, how do people get the book? How do they get more from you? Where do you hang out online? What's all that good stuff?
I guess the book, they can either go to Amazon or official DarrinPrince.com, DarrenPrince.com. Could follow me on Instagram at agent_DP. Like I said, I'm hoping and praying that several people listening DM me on there. All I need is your address and an email, and we will send free hardcover books to every single people. I would take hundreds of them, because I know that as long as I can get to one of you, and I can give you this gift that I've been so freely given, it's just a blessing that you can't even put into words. It's greatest thing I've ever done for myself for the longest amount of time. And if somebody wants advice on being a sports and entertainment agent and how to get there, and if I can open up doors for you, I got no problem doing that too.
Awesome, man. I love it. So like I said, I wrap up every single interview with this one question. Since the show is called The Growth Now Movement, the final question is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
My biggest moment of growth, it probably wouldn't be business. I would probably say it was on that date of July 2nd, 2008. The FBI experience in the mid-90s was definitely a moment of growth professionally, because I knew that I had 2 choices. You either go left or you go right, and I made the right one, and I kept fighting. But personally, hands down, July 2nd, 2008, what I thought was the worst day of my life turned out to be my very best.
I love it, man. Darrin, thank you so much for not only coming on and sharing your story, but doing what you do every single day to support a community of people that need it. The messages that you share, the impact that you're making is something that will live on forever, man. And just thank you so much.
Thanks. And I get so wrapped up into recovery. I know this is business. If people want to check us out, it's www.princemarketinggroup.com. And you can read about all the things that we do. And again, if anybody needs advice or whatever it is, I'm a phone call away, an email, instant message, and I'll be there for anybody that needs it.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.